of 3 to 4 years, I spoke to a cross section of engineers. This includes most of the managing directors after the formation of KWA. So very senior engineers to contemporary MDs I was able to speak to, but also engineers who are in service. So all that you will see in this presentation is basically your story, the story of Kerala Water Authority. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is I'm not going to directly start talking about the Kerala Water Supply Project, which is the JICA project. So what I'll do is I'll try to give some historical context of when KWA was formed and why was it formed, and what were the sort of larger events that shaped the formation of KWA. So we need to take a look at the All India picture first, and then we have to understand what happens in KWA from 1984 till 1997. Like Sir said, the JICA project was, they conceived it in the mid 90s, but the implementation began only in the 2000s. But a lot of things happen in KWA between 1984 and 2000. So we'll have to just get a sense of what happens in those 16 years to understand the impact of JICA project on KWA. The second clarification I want to give is I'm not going to talk about the success or failure of JICA project, how much water JICA project made available for people of Kerala, or the value of projects that was delivered, so on and so forth. So my focus is more on the institutional parts of the project. So how did the project affect KWA? How did the project transform KWA as an institution? So that's what I'm trying to, I'll try to attempt to kind of answer this question. So I'll just share my screen and start the presentation. Please tell me if you can see my presentation.
Yeah, visible.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. So hopefully all of you can see and hear me clearly. So I've titled it this way: JICA financed Kerala Water Supply Project. How did it change KWA? So, to begin with, I want to give an understanding of how Indian government has approached drinking water. So I've tried to understand this, this policy issue, or let's say, the issue of drinking water in three phases. So if we look at post-independence phase, which is from 1947 to 1970, the Indian government's focus was primarily on large infrastructure. You would be familiar with Jawaharlal Nehru's quote about dams being the temples of modern India and all those kinds of things. So from 1947 to 1970, there was not much of government focus on drinking water. So if you look at the planning documents, if you look at the 5-year plan documents, there is not much of financial expenditure on improving drinking water supply in the first phase. I call it the first phase, which is from 1947 to 1970. If you look at the second phase, which is from 1970 to 1990, this is the phase where there is greater focus of the government on provision of services. So in a sense, this is the phase where government becomes the major provider of services, especially drinking water supply. So if you look at major projects that emerged during this phase, you might be familiar with a project called Accelerated Rural Water Supply Program. I think till mid 2010 even, I think the funding was available for it, and it was merged with many projects, many schemes. It was renamed National Rural Drinking Water Program, then it became a mission, then all kinds of things happened, but primarily 1970s saw the saw greater interest of the government in directly becoming a service provider as far as drinking water supply is concerned. So this is the phase where majority of the expansion happens as far as drinking water supply is concerned, and it's the same story in Kerala as well. And the third phase that I've analyzed is the phase which is after 1990, which is essentially after the liberalization. So India adopts economic reforms, and India's strategy for providing drinking water supply undergoes a transformation here. So instead of government being the major service provider, or let's say government being the sole responsible actor for provision of drinking water supply, we are talking about using the private sector, using market-based strategies for enhancing service levels across the board. This is not just in water supply, be it healthcare, be it other sectors, this happens. But what happens between these two phases, especially the second and third phase, between 1970 and 1990, and the next phase, which is beginning from 1990, there is a clear shift from water, which was seen as welfare earlier, now is seen as a commercial activity. So essentially, according to policymakers, water should be priced, and water should be priced according to the expenditure that is incurred to produce water. So that's the sort of large picture that I want you to keep in mind. So now what I want to do is I want to give you a sense of when the transformation began happening, because most of I think the common belief is that drinking water supply, or greater private sector participation in drinking water sector began after the 1990s. I think that is not entirely correct. If you look at when the public health engineering departments were converted into boards, this happens not after 1990s. Most of the boards were formed in the 1970s. If you look at this table, you'll get a fair idea of the year in which most of these boards were formed across India. So you can see Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. Kerala was one of the last states to actually convert their public health engineering department into a board. There are still states which haven't converted public health engineering departments into boards. I think Rajasthan is one, Madhya Pradesh is another. Those are all exceptions. But largely across India, if we see, it is in the 1970s that public health engineering departments were converted into boards. So which basically means that from being an activity that was completely under the control of the government, direct control of the government, state government that is, when you form a board, the board basically starts taking policy decisions. The board becomes responsible for financial decisions, administrative decisions, so on and so forth. But this doesn't mean that the government is not having any influence on it. Actually, it's the government which is completely, shaping what happens in the board, so on and so forth. But it's important for us to keep in mind the year in which these boards are formed. Now, coming to Kerala, just giving you a very brief picture of the history of water supply in Kerala. So if we see 1833 to 1935, it's the Public Works Department primarily. This is, I'm talking about the Travancore princely state. In 1935, it's around 1935, I think that the Waterworks and Drainage Engineering Department is formed. This is when the Trivandrum water supply project is commissioned. So this institutional form, which is the Waterworks and Drainage Engineering Department, exists between 1935 to 1956. And after the formation of Kerala state in 1956, we have the Public Health Engineering Department that is formed in Kerala, which is basically formed from PWD. So one basic, constituent of PWD is PHED. And PHED was a very small department back then, from my understanding. From 1956 till 1970 at least, it was a very small department because PHED only had about 3 or 4 old schemes to operate and maintain. This included, I think, Kozhikode, Kochi and Trivandrum. Primarily, I think these 3, plus I think there were a few other projects that they were doing, small projects here and there. But largely it was these old schemes that they were operating and maintaining. And it was during this time that I think the organizational form that you see now today, where you have the chief engineer, then you have the superintending engineers, executive engineers. This particular organizational form emerged with the PHED. It was obviously derived from pre-independence times, but still, I think if you want to understand the organizational form that emerged in PHED, it goes back to this time. And if you see largely in this particular phase, 1956 to 1984, largely we saw that schemes were executed using state budgetary allocations, and Government of India allocations were very negligible, especially from 1956 to I think 1972. They were very negligible. But we'll see when the acceleration comes in terms of coverage. So this is the case of Kerala. If you see, it is in the 1970s that we see an increase in coverage. It is in the 1970s that we see expansion of water supply provision in the state. And primarily this comes from, finances that are actually tapped from government agencies like LIC and NABARD. So LIC starts funding water supply projects in the 1970s. So we can see that in the decade starting 1970, there is a huge increase in the number of urban schemes. So this is exactly the time when we had almost all the major cities in Kerala, that is today, getting a pipe water supply scheme. And it's the same with, rural water supply as well. Like I said earlier, the accelerator rural water supply program started getting implemented in the 1970s, and we can see that there is a huge jump in the number of, rural water supply schemes in the 1970 decade compared to 1961 to 71. That's one thing. And if you look at this slide, you can see that the population covered also expands drastically between 1960-70 and the decade beginning 1970-80. So you can see that 1970 to 80, almost 62% of urban population gets covered with pipe water supply in Kerala. But the expansion is not so much in rural areas. I think it's pretty understandable because Kerala still continues to primarily rely on well water for the drinking water needs. From my understanding, even today, there are many people, there are lakhs of people who still use their well water and use their pipe water for other uses. I think it's a cultural aspect or cultural dimension that a lot of people haven't paid attention to, but that's something that we need to keep in mind. So I just wanted to give this information because in the 1970s, the expansion came from money that was borrowed from LIC, and this was backed by the state government, which acted as the guarantor. And I think the interest rate was about 13% per annum, which was considered reasonable back then in the 1970s. And then the next expansion actually comes after the 1980s. So we are talking about pre-KWA era. I mean, this is about 1980 to 1984. And this is the time when we have the International Water and Sanitation Decade that is declared in Rio de Janeiro, I think. So 1980 to 1990 is declared as the UN Water and Sanitation Decade, and there is a huge interest from global agencies to support, developing countries in terms of improving their water supply and sanitation provision. So this is the decade when we start seeing multiple bilateral schemes, projects that are implemented using bilateral money. So you have the IBRD, you have the Netherlands, you have the Danida. I think you also have the British government, supporting certain projects. But it is during this time that I think a lot of changes start happening within KWA, within PHED, where the idea of consultants, where the project has had a provision for, for employing consultants for, let's say, designing a particular project or implementing a particular project. So things start changing here around this time. And if we can see that in the decade between 1980 and 1990, this is when KWA is formed. 1984 is when KWA is formed. And although KWA is formed at 1984, we don't see that, most of the projects are actually implemented or financed by local public sector funding agencies. This is LIC, HUTCO, and NABARD that we are talking about. So the extent of funding from World Bank, Netherlands, and Danida and other bilateral agencies was not substantial in terms of the size of funding, but in terms of their influence in how people in the state government or people within, Kerala Water Authority started thinking about water supply provision. The influence was very disproportionate. That's my understanding. So we can see, just to give you a sense of where plan funds have come from between 1968 and 2015. If we see, most of plan funds have come from, let's say, LIC, HUTCO, and mostly it's state plan funds. And if you look at the amount of funding that has come from overseas agencies, it's not comparable to the amount of money that has come from LIC, HUTCO, NABARD, and state plan funds. So if you can see here, I think JICA and ADB it's about 30% of plan funds. So just to kind of give you a sense of why JICA project is incredibly important, because suddenly till, let's say, 1996 till 2000, most of the funding came from, let's say, LIC, NABARD, HUTCO, and state plan funds. But suddenly you have this huge project in terms of, the project size. Sir also pointed out that it was about 17,700 crores, then it got expanded to 2,900 crores. So in terms of the project size, I think it was a huge project. And you can see that JICA project becomes a major, major contributor to plant funds finance beginning in 2000s. And another kind of interesting data that that I think I have tried to kind of get this from data collected from KWA and state economic reviews. If we see the percentage of population covered and source of funds, almost 70% of population covered comes from state plan funds and basically money borrowed from central government agencies or government agencies primarily. And if we look at the population covered using JICA, it's about 16.22%. This 5.36% World Bank is primarily Jalanidhi. That's my understanding, plus a few other projects, but most of the 5.36% is mostly Jalanidhi. And the 7.74% comes from Netherlands and Danida. So if we look at, the amount of money that has been spent and the source of those funds and where population coverage has increased, it's primarily from government funds and basically money borrowed from government agencies. But still, I think we have to pay attention to the fact that JICA almost contributed. According to these are numbers from 2013, so it contributed almost 16% of population covered in Kerala. This is 10 years old data. So sorry about this. Might not have changed much, but I think these numbers are quite reasonably okay. And what happens in KWA, especially after the 1990s? So the one major difference between funding that comes from LIC and funding that comes from foreign agencies is that the LIC funding did not have much of conditionalities attached to it. So for instance, there was no sort of stipulation on employing consultants, or there was no stipulation on how to spend the money. So in a sense, KWA had a lot of autonomy in where money could be spent. So primarily the decisions on where money should be spent was primarily a technical decision. That's what I understand. And these decisions are primarily taken by engineers. But if we look at the overall sort of philosophy behind water supply provision in the 1990s, even it was mostly welfare. That was largely the focus. And if you look at organizationally what happens in the 1980s and 1990s, because of the large number of projects that started coming in, this is even before, I think, if you look at late 1970s, because of a lot of money coming from LIC and NABARD and other agencies and also the state plan funds, Kerala, the organization had a separate wing called the Investigation Planning and Design Wing. I think a lot of old engineers will obviously remember this particular organizational component, where most of the investigation, planning and design was done. This was done by engineers in-house. But one major thing happens after the formation of Kerala Water Authority. It's very clear that with the formation of the board, the focus is now more on, let's say, increasing the revenue from water. So we can clearly see that from 1992, you can clearly see the number of standpipes have pretty much flattened out, but the number of private connections has increased. So one way of looking at it is KWA is trying to think about increasing the money that can be generated from, let's say, providing water supply, because I think KWA starts feeling the pinch in terms of meeting its multiple expenditure in terms of operation maintenance, expenditure in terms of salaries, so on and so forth. So this is one change that starts happening after the 1990s. And second thing is, I think this is very clear. I think employee connection ratio is also, has seen a huge increase. This is attributable to two things. One is that the number of connections that's increased humongously over the years. Like Sir said, I think we have enhanced the percentage of population that has been connected with pipe water supply hugely over the last 10, 15, last 2-3 decades. And this is also due to the amount of money that has come through foreign agencies like JICA or ADB, or now we are talking about other agencies. But at the same time, I think the recruitment in terms of engineers also goes down because of, one reason is obviously financial, but the other reason is that the number of engineers working in-house can actually manage. So there is no need to sort of go and recruit engineers. But I think there is a clear trend here in terms of cutting down in the number of engineering recruitments. And at the same time, if we look at, I think, mid-1990s, just around the time when the JICA project was about to be started, the IPD was closed, the Investigation Planning and Design Wing was closed. I mean, for various reasons, I don't want to get into the details of it. I think people here in the forum might be able to share some details of what happened during that time and why was the investigation planning and design being closed. Because my understanding was the investigation planning and design being had a lot of I think criticism. I think that's fine, but I think it was also a particular wing which allowed engineers to actually experience designing schemes by themselves, in enhancing their skills, in understanding the technical parts of it, and also kind of enhancing their skills and also applying their education, so on and so forth. So the IPD was a very important part of KWA for two reasons. One is it allowed KWA to have the internal organizational capacity to design and implement schemes. I think investigate, design, and implement schemes. That was the first thing. The second thing was, I think, related to how engineers felt that their job was meaningful. So my understanding is, over time, most of the engineers I speak to, is especially not the very old ones, but I think people who joined around the 1990s, or let's say earlier than that, most of them feel that their engineering skills are not being used, and they are basically pushing files, and they're not really excited about what they are doing. So, but IPD as a form allowed engineers to actually be creative, and allowed engineers to feel that they were engineers. So, and IPD gets closed during this time. And one senior engineer gave me this particular metaphor in Malayalam. He said, we basically burned down the house for getting the rats. So basically, he said, in order to cut the amount of money that we can save, we basically closed down IPD, and that was like basically burning down the house, which was basically destroying all the institutional capacity and the history of the knowledge and institutional wherewithal that was generated over decades of work. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. And the other thing is that, obviously, I think engineers had, the dominance of engineers keeps kind of diminishing over time. And we can see that, I think I had instances where a few engineers told me that, they are not chief engineers now, so they're waste engineers, and they're not technical members, they're non-technical members. So in a sense, it showed the frustration of engineers in terms of their role in the organization, how they can contribute better, but they're not getting the avenues to contribute. And the other thing is, obviously, it's to do with the amount of money that KWA makes, and they don't have the autonomy to fix the tariffs. And that's because of the lack of autonomy in fixing tariffs that KWA is bleeding. KWA is making so much loss, and that is actually impacting salaries, pensions. It's also impacting operation maintenance. We'll come to that later. And now let's keep this particular context in mind when we try to understand what happens when Kerala Water Supply project is conceived and it is implemented. Like Sir said earlier, the project had 5 components: Pattuham and adjacent villages in North Kerala. Then you had Kozhikode city and adjoining villages, Cherthala and Thiruvananthapuram, and you had Meenad and adjoining villages. So this was the design population. This was in I picked it up from the project completion report from the Tokyo Engineering Consultants Office. So this is data from their official documents. And just to give you a timeline of the project, I think, like Sir said, this might be a repetition, but I think it's important to pay attention to what happens with the project. So 1993, from what I understand, this is material that I collected from the library, which is there, and I think the training center. I think there is a library, and most of these reports were found in that library. And we had the Tata Consulting agency. They prepared a plan for water supply enhancement at Trivandrum city, and this was supposed to be submitted for World Bank funding. This was ready in 1993, but that did not come through. But 1996, I think there is talk of a project that will be funded with JBIC money. JBIC is essentially the Japanese development funding agency, and we already had a particular report that was ready. The project was already designed, and all those things were already ready, so we had that ready made. And then this project, this opportunity for funding emerges, and the first loan agreement is signed between JBIC and Government of India in 1997. And 96 to 2001 is the LDF government, and then 97 to 98 the project hits a roadblock. There is controversy around this time. I'm not very clear about what happened that time, but I have an idea, but I don't want to get into that. and there is some controversy about choosing the consultant. There is a lot of litigation that happens, but in 2001, after the Congress government comes back to power, the project is revived. I think A.K. Antony being the, I think, MLA of Chertala, I think there is a lot of personal, I think he took a personal interest and the project was revived. And the key thing that happens with the JICA project, the Kerala Water Supply Project, is that according to the funding conditionalities, the design, the project implementation, essentially the entire project management was supposed to be done by consultant. They did not want Kerala Water Authority to design, to implement, and to manage the entire project. So essentially, the consulting contract, I wouldn't call it the consulting contract, the project management contract was given to Tokyo Engineering Consultants. And here it's important to, I think a lot of people know this, but Tokyo Engineering Consultants is not one company. It is actually a consortium of 5 companies where you had Tokyo Engineering Consultants, you had GKW, and then you had another German consulting company. I don't remember the name of the company. I think I have it in the next slide. Then you had 2 Indian counterparts. One is Shaw Technical Consultants and CED, Center for Environment and Development, which is a Trivandrum-based non-governmental organization. They were also part of the consortium. So it was this consortium that ends up designing and implementing the project, and then we have the other things listed here. But I want to get into, what happened with, what are the changes that we saw with the Kerala Water Supply Project. So, like I said, first is obviously hiring of external consultants for engineering, design, construction, and project management services. Earlier, it was Kerala Water Supply, Kerala Water Authority engineers who are designing and overseeing the design, so on and so forth. So, for instance, I think we had EPCM, we had other modes of engaging contractors and engaging external sort of experts. But here, clearly, there is a shift towards hiring of external consultants and empowering external consultants to such an extent that they start calling the shots. Yes, Kerala Water Authority engineers also had a role here in passing the bills and in vetting the designs. But my understanding is their role or their agency or their autonomy in decision making was largely eroded. That's my understanding. I'm open to sort of disagreements, and I'm open to be corrected on this. And clearly, second thing is there is a separate dedicated project division that's created. This was not the culture earlier, and this has now become, normalized. So if you look at the JNNURM projects, if you look at the ADB projects, if you look at multiple projects that are being implemented now, this is pretty much the norm now. And like Sir said, I think there is another component which is called the institutional strengthening of KWA, which is a soft component. Here we are not talking about building of treatment plants or construction mains or, let's say, overhead tanks. We are talking about the soft components of it. For instance, how do we improve productivity of people working in KWA? Where is the money going? So there was a lot of controversy around it. I'll come to that. But this is largely Kerala Water Supply Project, pre-JICA project and post-JICA project. So here we had design, execution, inspection, construction, all of it was pretty much largely controlled by the organization in-house. The engineers were largely responsible, and I think it also gave them, the power to sort of control the process. But with the emergence of Kerala Water Supply Project, you can clearly see that there is a huge shift here. While Kerala Water Authority is part of this conversation, but Kerala Water Authority becomes the client now, and the engineer is now the external consultant. The Kerala Water Authority engineers are not the engineers. At least going by how each and every actor is called in this particular process. And the other thing that I want to kind of highlight very quickly is how, while it is assumed that the project was actually, implemented, the project management was done by external consultants. Most of, engineers working for these consulting companies were our own retired engineers. Without their tacit knowledge, without their contextual knowledge, it was really difficult for engineers from, let's say, outside India or from other states to implement schemes on the ground. It was easy for engineers to actually implement projects like a water treatment plant because it doesn't involve much of interacting with public or interacting with other agencies. But clearly, when it comes to road digging, when it comes to negotiating with other agencies, when it comes to getting things done on the ground, there was a lot of local know-how and tacit knowledge that was really required. I changed the names here. I think if old people are there, they'll be able to guess who these people are. But I think one thing that I want to clearly point out here is, if you look at the project policy documents, if we look at how policymakers in Delhi or policymakers from World Bank talk about how public sector agencies do not have the skills or the experience, or let's say the attitude to productively function and implement schemes, that was not how I saw things on the ground. Clearly, we see that without the involvement of these old engineers, it wouldn't be easy for these consulting firms to actually get the project implemented. And when it comes to how engineers saw this particular process, I think the younger engineers were pretty much indifferent. They said, we don't care. But I think the older engineers who had experienced things earlier, they felt their capabilities were not utilized. So I thought I'll just flag that here. And this is one circular which was, which I could get my hands on, which was put out by the management, because many of the engineers were joining consulting firms immediately after retiring, and that was actually undermining the autonomy of KWA to make decisions impartially. So this is sort of a conflict of interest that has emerged not only in the water sector, but we are seeing it in metro rail construction, we are seeing it in telecom sector, and so on and so forth. So this is something for us to keep in mind. And just coming back to how the last, let's say, 30-35 years of doing things in KWA has actually shaped shape the organizational outcomes. One is, I think, clearly I see a connection between the lack of devolution of drinking water supply schemes in Kerala to the formation of KWA. By this, I'll try to explain what I mean here. If you look at Kerala, Kerala is a state known for decentralization. So it has decentralized most of, let's say, responsibilities or authority to local bodies. You know that Kerala is one of the states where 73rd Amendment, 73rd and 74th Amendments are very effectively implemented through the People's Plan campaign, and we know the history of it. But when it comes to water, primarily water has remained in the hands of KWA, and one reason I see for this particular result is the formation of KWA, and KWA, because of the fact that it was focused on financial considerations, and KWA as an organization was not, ready to, let's say, devolve schemes. That's one way of putting it, but a lot of people in KWA will disagree. It's also that a lot of panchayats and municipalities do not want the responsibility of drinking water provision. That's another reason. So that's one thing that we need to keep in mind. I don't know the reasons for it, but I think we can discuss it. The second is, I think there is a trend towards decreasing O&M expenditure, which is actually hurting the assets that have been created using, let's say, the lakhs of rupees that have been spent over the years. And we can clearly see that, beginning from 2005 to 2015-16, we can see that the salary, pension, and establishment has actually increased beyond 50%. I'm not saying that they should be brought down. All I'm saying is, because of the financial crunch that is experienced in KWA, there is a decreasing focus on O&M. I wouldn't call it decreasing focus, but I think there is decreasing sort of financial investment towards O&M expenditure, and this is leading to deterioration of assets. And this might again require Kerala Water Authority to again, invest hugely in capital works again. So that's one thing that I think we need to keep in mind. Just coming back to the Kerala Water Supply Project, these are my broad observations. I think one key observation is that the loan conditionalities are not very transparent. We really do not know how decisions are made. And when it comes to choosing consultants, I think it is well known across the world that when a funder is funding a project, the funder decides who decides or has a very substantial say in who becomes the consultant when it comes to, let's say, designing and implementing a project. That was the case with Kerala Water Supply Project as well. This is my understanding. So I think many of the policymakers and, let's say, people in the government also feel that it will be better if global lending agencies make this transparently apparent in the sense they can upfront say that we will give you money, but we'll have a say in who gets to be the consultant. But that doesn't happen. So this leads to a lot of opacity in decision making. And the other thing is, I think Kerala Water Authority's role has been reduced to a facilitator. So they are not part of the design, and let's say all the conversations that go around designing and implementing projects because of I think peripheral role of Kerala Water Authority engineers. There have been many cases where the designs have not been context appropriate. They have found that the designs have to be retweaked. The designs had to be they have to be revised because they couldn't be implemented on the ground because of the fact that the people who are designing it did not have an understanding of what is there on the ground, so on and so forth. And the other thing is, I think when it comes to funding from external agencies, the project conditionalities or the project stipulations restrict the role of domestic technology and service providers in select functions. So, for instance, when it comes to the technology that was, technology or the plant that was installed in Trivandrum, I think near Arvikara, it is Degrimont. So, one way of looking at it is the way the project, the tendering itself is. Is framed, it actually restricts the role of domestic technology and service providers in this. So in a sense, it favors global technology providers. That's one way of looking at it. And the other thing is, I think when it comes to institutional strengthening component, there were multiple soft components which I talked about. One is, I think they talked about assistance in bulk metering. They talked about reducing non-revenue water. They talked about introduction of ERP and MIS. They said they wanted the data of Kerala Water Supply, Kerala Water Authority engineers, how much each of them is getting paid, and so on and so forth. They wanted to actually get into these numbers to have a greater say in, let's say, decision making. But that was really resisted by Kerala Water Authority. And if we see, the ones in red were not actually implemented. But the one in, I think the one at the black, I think most of them got done. But like Sir said, I think some things like SCADA and other things were done, but I think there have been a huge failure. And one good thing to come out of the JICA project has been the major, I think, the big building in the Velayambalam office, which I think has actually been built using the money from this particular project. Just observations by CAG. I'll just flag this of the project. CAG says that the project cost overrun was about 67%. Which is exorbitantly high. The second is CAG observes that inadequate and faulty surveys by consultants. Why was this? Was it because Kerala Water Authority engineers were not consulted, or they were not equal partners in the decision making as far as design and implementation is concerned? That's up to debate. Second is, I think the other is inflated budget estimates, because the estimates were, again, I think, prepared with huge influence of consultants and external agencies. And the other thing is inadequate monitoring of contractors by consultants. These are all things that the CAG points out. So I think this is all there in public realm. And I think what I want to point out here is, when it comes to the Kerala Water Supply project, JICA project, I wouldn't say that the project has been completely designed and implemented because of foreign or overseas influence. I think I disagree with that. I think the government of Kerala also had a very very substantial say in how the project came to be implemented. I think I don't have any problem in stating that. But the problem that I find with Kerala, with the model that was followed when it comes to implementing the Kerala Water Supply project, is this separation of control and responsibility. So essentially, the control is with consultants, with these 5 agencies, which is Tokyo Engineering Consultants, but the responsibility continues to be with KWA. So, for instance, in many cases across the world, this is something that is being seen increasingly as a problem, where the public sector is responsible for service provision, but when it comes to building assets, when it comes to even maintaining assets, they don't have control over it. Yeah, they have control over it in a financial sense, but not in an organizational sense. So this is something that is emerging in the recent past. And like I said earlier, I think there is a lot of, there is not much of transparency when it comes to decision making. When it comes to accountability. So what happens when a design is faulty? What happens when a design is not implementable? Who's responsible for it? Who's answerable for it? So there are no clear answers here. If we ask the consultants, they'll say that we just followed what was given to us, what was there in the DPR. But eventually, it is public money that is being sort of lost, right? So that's another issue. The other major issue I think I find with the way projects are implemented now is, I think, institutional weakening of Kerala Water Authority. I think the knowledge and the institutional practices that actually can be institutionalized within the organization are not getting institutionalized. So we are having this scenario where the consultants come in, they design, and implementation is also done by, let's say, private sector players, but nothing gets institutionalized within the organization. And that is actually undermining our ability, in the sense, the ability of KWA to actually demand accountability from consultants. We need to be able to tell the consultants what we want from them rather than just listening to them. So that's something that I thought I'll point out. So this is just a diagram to kind of give you a sense of what is happening now in this sector. So if we look at, where the design and implementation is happening, so we are looking at these expert knowledge providers. These are primarily consultants. These special purpose vehicles are basically institutional firms that are used for designing and implementing projects. But if we see, the problem here is that the finances are actually flowing out from government to the private sector. Okay, but the problem is there is no knowledge that is coming back into the public sector. I see that as a problem, because going forward, if KWA or any other public utility, any other water board is not in a position to demand or to kind of to have a sense of control over design, implementation, and the entire process, I think there is a problem here in terms of accountability and in terms of outcomes as well. So that's something I thought I'll point out. And when it comes to, I think there is a huge debate around privatization, and there is talk of how multinational companies are going to take over government water supply responsibilities. I don't think that is going to happen. I'm putting my neck out and saying it, not because I am a neoliberal by persuasion, but clearly the private sector has understood that the only way to make money in the drinking water sector is through PPPs or private sector participation. So we are looking at basically project management services as a way for, let's say, making profit in this sector. I don't see the private sector coming into, let's say, taking over the responsibility for drinking water provisioning. That is not going to happen. So we need to be careful about using the term privatization. That's one thing that I'll try to kind of point out here, because the kind of reforms that we are seeing, the kind of institutional changes we are seeing at KWA is not a straightforward form of privatization, or, let's say, not privatization. This is not privatization. Actually, what is happening is it's much more complex and much more insidious. If we see how reforms have led to, let's say, the undermining of engineers, the undermining of public sector as, let's say, inefficient, or they paint the entire public sector as inefficient. And the major issue that I see emerging in the sector is the capacity deficit in public sector agencies, which actually does not bode well for public good. That's what I'll say. The other thing, I think, when it comes to understanding why Kerala is going for these funding opportunities, why Kerala is open to such funding opportunities, I think it has to be linked to the sustainability of Kerala model, where we are talking about lack of finances in the state, and there is high welfare expenditure. There is a need for state to tap funding that is available for enhancing water supply provisions. So the questions that I want you to have some kind of conversation, or let's say we can have a debate, or let's say discussion on this. One thing I would say is consultants and consultancies are here to stay. We are not going to go back to EPCM, or we're not going to go back to 1980s. So what do we do about this? So how do we get the best out of these external consultants or the private sector players without compromising the institutional capacity of KWA? or without compromising our engineers. So basically, how do we empower our engineers? How do we give them a sense of purpose when it comes to their work? Because this is something I found in my work, and while talking to many of the engineers are, I think my understanding is some of them are really, I think, not very excited about their work. I think they feel that their work, their capabilities are not utilized. So how do we get the best out of our engineers? I think that will lead to improving morale in the organization. So then the other question is, I think, what do we do then? So can we afford to ignore other complementary skills? So can we have trainings, or can we have other ways of enhancing our skills and knowledge, which will allow us to, let's say, compete with the private sector, or let's say, improve our internal capacities. So in order to do this, I think that much needs to be done in terms of organizational structure and responsibilities. How do we think about these things? This is something that is up for debate. The last part is, I think, to do with public-public partnerships. We've only heard of public-private partnerships, but I think in UK and US and in other Western contexts, I think this is becoming very relevant. There are public agencies that are actually sharing knowledge, sharing best practices as to how to enhance in-house capacities and how to best take care of public sector engineers and public sector culture. So how do we think about public-public partnerships? Can we build bridges? Can we build partnerships with other water boards or other public sector agencies in other sectors? And how do we support each other? That's something that we can think about. So I'll stop here. I hope I made something understandable. Yeah, I'll stop here. Thank you.
So interaction. Okay, before interaction, ബൈജു സാറിനെ കുറിച്ച് ഒരു ഇൻട്രൊഡക്ഷൻ കൊടുക്കുക, എന്നിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആൻസർ സെഷനിലേക്ക് പോകും. ബൈജു സാർ.
സാർ അൺമ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യണേ.
താങ്ക് യു ഡോക്ടർ ഗൗതം. ഈ സെഷൻ തുടങ്ങുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് തന്നെ ഡോക്ടർ ഗൗതമിനെ പറ്റി ഒരു ഇൻട്രൊഡക്ഷൻ തരേണ്ടതായിരുന്നു. ഇപ്പോൾ അദ്ദേഹത്തിനെ പറ്റി ചില വാക്കുകൾ ഞാൻ പറയാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുകയാണ്. പ്രൊഫസർ ഗൗതം ഗണപതി, അദ്ദേഹം അസീം പ്രേംജി യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി, ബാംഗ്ലൂരിലുള്ള അസീം പ്രേംജി യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിലെ സ്കൂൾ ഓഫ് ഡെവലപ്മെന്റിലുള്ള അസിസ്റ്റന്റ് പ്രൊഫസറായിട്ട് വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുകയാണ്. ബേസിക്കലി ഈസ് എ മെക്കാനിക്കൽ എഞ്ചിനീയർ. He completed his graduation from Coimbatore Institute of Engineering. പോസ്റ്റ് ഗ്രാജുവേഷൻ മെക്കാനിക്കൽ എഞ്ചിനീയറിംഗ് ആണ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി ഓഫ് മിഷിഗൺ. അതിനുശേഷം IIT ബോംബെയിൽ നിന്നും ടെക്നോളജി ആൻഡ് ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് എന്ന സബ്ജക്റ്റിൽ PhD എടുത്തു. ഇതിന്റെ PhD തീസിസ് അൺപാക്കിംഗ് റിഫോംസ് ഇൻ ഡ്രിങ്കിംഗ് വാട്ടർ, എ സ്റ്റഡി ഓഫ് പബ്ലിക് വാട്ടർ യൂട്ടിലിറ്റി റിഫോംസ് ഇൻ കേരള. കേരളത്തിനെ പറ്റിയുള്ള സ്പെസിഫിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള സ്റ്റഡി ആയിരുന്നു അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ PhD തീസിസ്. അപ്പൊ അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ഏരിയാസ് ഓഫ് ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് വാട്ടർ ആൻഡ് സാനിറ്റേഷൻ ഗവേണൻസ്, സോഷ്യൽ ഇക്കോളജി ഓഫ് വാട്ടർ ആൻഡ് പോളിസി പ്രോസസ് ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യ, മറ്റ് പല കാര്യങ്ങളും അതിനോടൊപ്പം വരുന്നുണ്ട്. പിന്നെ അദ്ദേഹം വാട്ടർ അതോറിറ്റി തന്നെ സ്പെസിഫിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള പല ആർട്ടിക്കിളുകളും പ്രസ്റ്റീജിയസ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ജേർണലുകൾ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇന്ന് എക്കണോമിക് ആൻഡ് പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ വീക്കിൽ അദ്ദേഹം പ്രസിദ്ധീകരിച്ച 2 ശ്രദ്ധേയമായിട്ടുള്ള ലേഖനങ്ങളുണ്ട്. ഒന്ന് കൊളോണിയൽ മോഡേണിറ്റി ഷേപ്പിംഗ് ദി പൈപ്പ് ഡ്രീം, എ ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കൽ അക്കൗണ്ട് ഓഫ് അഡ്വൻസ് ഓഫ് ദി മോഡേൺ വാട്ടർ സപ്ലൈ സിസ്റ്റം ഇൻ ട്രിവാൻഡ്രം. നമ്മുടെ തിരുവനന്തപുരത്തുള്ള വെല്ലിംഗ്ടൺ വാട്ടർ വർക്സിന്റെ ഉത്പത്തിയെ പറ്റിയുള്ള ഒരു പേപ്പറാണ്. മറ്റൊന്ന് കോൺഫ്രണ്ടിങ് ദ എലിഫന്റ് ഇൻ ദ റൂം, ഡ്രിങ്കിംഗ് വാട്ടർ ഗവേണൻസ് റീഫോംസ് ആൻഡ് ഡിമിനിഷിംഗ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ് കപ്പാസിറ്റി ഇൻ കേരള. അതായത് ഇപ്പൊ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്ത കാര്യങ്ങൾ തന്നെയാണ് നമ്മുടെ കേരളത്തിലുള്ള ഡ്രിങ്കിംഗ് വാട്ടർ സെക്ടർ എങ്ങനെ എവോൾവ് ചെയ്ത് വന്നു എന്നുള്ളതിനെ പറ്റിയുള്ള ഒരു സ്റ്റഡിയാണ്. വളരെ ശ്രദ്ധേയമായിട്ടുള്ള 2 ആർട്ടിക്കിൾസ് ആണ്, നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും വായിച്ചിരിക്കേണ്ട 2 ആർട്ടിക്കിൾസ് ആണെന്നാണ് എൻ്റെ അഭിപ്രായം. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ അദ്ദേഹം നമ്മുടെ തിരുവനന്തപുരത്തുള്ള കാട്ടാക്കട മണ്ഡലത്തിൽ നടന്നിട്ടുള്ള ജലസമൃദ്ധി പ്രോജക്റ്റ് ഒരു വാട്ടർ കൺസർവേഷൻ പ്രോജക്റ്റ് ആണ്. ആ പ്രോജക്റ്റിനെ പറ്റിയുള്ള ഒരു മോണോഗ്രാഫ് അദ്ദേഹം എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ കേരളത്തിൽ നടന്നിട്ടുള്ള സോളിഡ് വേസ്റ്റ് ഡിസ്പോസൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ലിക്വിഡ് വേസ്റ്റുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട പ്രശ്നങ്ങളെ പറ്റിയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ അദ്ദേഹം എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇത്തരത്തിൽ കേരളത്തിനെ പറ്റിയും ഇവിടുത്തെ ഡ്രിങ്കിംഗ് വാട്ടർ സെക്ടറിനെ പറ്റിയും ലിക്വിഡ് വേസ്റ്റ് സെക്ടറിനെ പറ്റിയും വളരെ വിശാലമായിട്ട് പഠിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു വ്യക്തിയാണ് അദ്ദേഹം. നമ്മുടെ ADV പ്രോജക്റ്റുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട അതിന്റെ വിവിധ കാര്യങ്ങൾ അദ്ദേഹം നമ്മളെ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ നമ്മുടെ അക്വായുമായിട്ടും നമ്മുടെ എഞ്ചിനീയേഴ്സുമായിട്ടും ഓഫീസേഴ്സുമായിട്ടും അദ്ദേഹം ഇന്ററാക്ട് ചെയ്യാനുള്ള വളരെ താല്പര്യങ്ങൾ പലതവണ അദ്ദേഹം നമ്മളെ അറിയിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇതൊരു സ്റ്റേജ് അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് അത്തരത്തിൽ ഒരുക്കി കൊടുക്കാനൊന്നും കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടില്ല. എനിവേ, ഐ താങ്ക് യു ഡോക്ടർ ഗൗതം ഫോർ യുവർ ഗുഡ് പ്രസന്റേഷൻ.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
ഓക്കെ, ഇന്ററാക്ഷൻ ആണ്. നമ്മുടെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ആളുകൾ ഇതിലുണ്ട്. ജിക്ക പ്രോജക്റ്റ് കൺസീവ് ചെയ്തത് മുതൽ അത് ഇംപ്ലിമെന്റ് ചെയ്ത ആൾക്കാരൊക്കെ ഇതിൻ്റെ അകത്തുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഓൾറെഡി അവർക്ക് ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാം. അതുപോലെ നമ്മുടെ ഓഡിയൻസ് ആയിട്ട് വന്നിട്ടുള്ളവർക്കും ഇതിൻ്റെ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാം. ആരൊരാൾ ടൈപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് കുറെ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഒക്കെ ഇട്ട് അത് ചോദിക്കാം. സൂസൻ മാഡം ഉണ്ടോ? സൂസൻ മാഡം ചോദിക്കാം. ഫോർമർ മാനേജിംഗ് ഡയറക്ടർ.
Yes, I'm here only, but I think I will interfere at the last. First, I think the other persons, those who are in service now, or some other persons, they can interact first, and then after that I will share my views. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, Susan, ma'am. I hope you remember me. I came with you in at your home. This is some 10 years back.
Yeah.
I hope you're fine.
Yeah. Yes. Initially, I couldn't.
I came to Kodamangalam to meet you.
Yeah. Earlier, when you started the presentation, actually, I didn't understand that you were the same person. But
Yes.
Later on, I understand that you are ASS. I remember.
ഓക്കെ, അപ്പൊ മറ്റുള്ളവരെ ചോദ്യം ചോദിക്കാം. രഞ്ജു, ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് എന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ ADB പശ്ചാത്തലത്തിൽ ധാരാളം ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടാവുമല്ലോ.
Harikumar is giving some questions. I think Harikumar B is giving some questions, typed questions. അയച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടല്ലോ.
Yes, madam.
Hari.
Yes, Hari, please.
Gautam sir, regarding the completed projects during the past 40 years, I mean 1984 to 2024,
Correct.
like LIC, NABARD, JICA, then JINRAM, like that. Could you just brief out the CBR, I mean the cost benefit ratio and the failures from KWA regarding the projects?
Thank you, sir. So I don't have numbers. I mean, I haven't performed any calculation to give you the cost benefit ratio of all these projects. Largely, if you look at the institutional arrangements for implementing these projects, I think there is a clear difference between LIC and NABARD projects that are financed with LIC and NABARD and projects that were actually implemented with JICA funding or even JNNURM funding. So clearly with JNNURM, the similar kind of institutional arrangement is used for designing and implementing the projects. But I think when it comes to projects that were funded, that were implemented using LIC and NABARD, I think the KWA engineers or the organization PHED or KWA had much more autonomy when it came to how the money could be used, and in terms of which particular schemes to be, which particular geographical area to be focused on. So that was not stipulated. So which allowed, the organization or the engineers on the ground to decide where there was need, and they could actually channel the funds to those areas. So they had more autonomy. That's my understanding. But when it comes to JICA project or JNNURM project, the places where these were going to be implemented was pre-decided. It was decided, and it was not something that engineers had much say on. That's my understanding.
Is it due to the the variation of efficiency compared to the former senior officers and the new gen, including me?
It's hard to say, sir. There are two arguments when it comes to this. Okay, sir, I'll tell you both the arguments. I don't know which one I agree. I think both of them are true. I might sound a little offensive here, but I think the argument that private consulting firms and project management services are more efficient is true and false. It's let's kind of agree to that. So that's one thing. Second thing is, I think when it came to some projects that were executed within KWA, I think there were cases where there were cost overruns for various reasons. One was, I think, public protests or other reasons. There were cost overruns, and And again, I think we have to go back to why AWA is thinking about, let's say, cutting costs or let's say doing things more efficiently. In a sense, when government says that water supply is explicitly not its responsibility, when government clearly takes a policy stance that water can be water is as good as an economic good, then KWA is expected to meet its financial requirements by the resources that it generates in-house. So this logic of KWA being financially self-sufficient, I mean, starts sort of making the management think about cutting costs. In a sense, then you're thinking about getting an external agency to implement your project. So, for instance, if you have to recruit 20 engineers, you have to pay their salaries for 40 years, you have to also pay their pension. So this is the argument they'll give. But when it comes to just implementing it with an external agency, that the cost is not so much, right? So in a sense, a lot of it actually boils down to KWA not being a department. If KWA was a department, things will be a little different. But KWA being KWA is in theory supposed to function like a private agency. I mean, at least in terms of how much money comes in and how much money goes out. If you think about it, that's the board form, organizational form. Although that is not how it works in reality, but I think there are a lot of compulsions that come in when it comes to, I mean, a water supply service provision that is provided by a board. So I think I'll give you this very long answer. I'm not sure whether you're convinced. Yeah.
Okay. Manish, raise the hand. Manish, please.
Joy, കേൾക്കാലോ അല്ലേ? Am I audible?
കേൾക്കാം.
You're audible.
Traveling, that's why. Sir, it was a wonderful presentation initially. I was working with JICA in Cherthala. Okay, it was a completed scheme, and I personally feel JICA Cherthala is one of the finest and well-designed schemes. And as you will be aware, that is the only, to be honest, at least 95+% completed scheme, which is functioning very well right now. So there are, of course, some irregularities at some places, but still it is working well. But I'm not coming to that. My point is, see, any external agency or any externally, any external agency which is giving us some kind of an aid, like JICA, World Bank, ADB, whomsoever it may be, they basically insist upon depending on a consultant. Okay, that is their requirement. It's not either a Kerala government's requirement or KWS requirement. It is their requirement. The funding agency's requirement is they basically rely upon a consultant, and KWS is, very generously termed as a special purpose vehicle or somebody like that. Being see, we are not a true government department. It is a quasi government department.
Yes.
So we are treated as a so-called special purpose vehicle. But ultimately, when it came to execution of JICA projects, see, the major brains, I'm not saying entirely it was held by KWA people, but the major brains behind the design of JICA project was, as you're well aware, the retired hands of KWA. So in fact, the brains of KWA actually work behind JICA. So when it comes to the next externally aided project, be it World Bank or the present ADB thing, we are definitely waiting for another set of retired or senior engineers from KWA to come in. So we are actually competent enough to build up all these things together. So I'm being a bit lengthy, but still, I just want to come to my point clearly. So KWA is actually competent enough to conduct all these things, in particular in design, be it execution, whatsoever. With the present scenario, what is happening in Kerala, we are competent enough to do that. But the external agency solely depend upon the consultant's words. And of course, the boosted up estimates are always a source of question. And the only reason what they are saying is the data that we are supplying, the amount or the rates at this moment are not convincing to global contracting firms or whomsoever it may be. So they are expecting a better rates, which shall never be received from any government department. It's not just from KWA, but not from any government department. So that is one of the reasons which the external agencies say is why they are depending upon the external consultants or whomsoever it may be. But in most of the cases, these consultants create more troubles than giving us more convincing details, which you're also aware about. So it's actually this middlemen who create the issues when it comes to the existence of KWA. The capabilities of KWA are being questioned. Even in the case of ADB, which is happening right now, many of the studies which they have conducted are not convincing to any of the KWA members. That is a primary issue.
Yes.
When all those things are kept aside, consultants are not untouchables at the moment for government, for the external agencies also. So what, in your opinion, is that KWA people are supposed to, supposed to jump into initially for being a part and parcel of this project? Because it is a government policy whether to adopt externally aided funding. Okay, government is actually depending upon the funding and only looking upon the well-being of the people. So when government looks upon something like that, what is that KWA should do? What is that officers or engineers or department people or entire staff of KWA should do in order to assure that these things come in favor of KWA? When it comes to consultant and other agencies, of course, as you said, it is not much favorable to KWA. Our integrity is being questioned at many times. That's what I feel. So what is it that we are supposed to do? It's a lengthy question. I think you got the essence.
Yes, I got it, but I'm not sure I'm qualified enough to give this answer. I think very senior people are there in this forum. But like you said, sir, I think the key difference which I find with people who designed, who are the brains behind the Kerala JICA project, I think they were, they had experience with designing things for Kerala Water Authority. So we talked about IPD. They had experience doing multiple things. So, for instance, doing execution on the ground, doing a design in-house, doing multiple things, administrative responsibilities, and all those kinds of things. So that equipped them, that gave them the skill and the expertise to actually do the things well. So my concern or my complaint is that younger engineers are not getting that opportunity. Right, and getting their opportunity with designing, with doing things on the ground. So that's where I think all of us become better engineers. As an engineer myself, I know, all that you learn from textbooks are not very useful when it comes to getting things done on the ground. I think there is a lot of tacit knowledge, there is a lot of experience, there is a lot of creativity when it comes to getting things on the ground and designing things which actually work on the ground. But the concern is a lot of our engineers are not getting that opportunity, and that is actually weakening our position in terms of what we can demand when it comes to projects such as the one we are talking about, right, the ADB funded projects. So if we are in a strong position, we can say that we'll also be equal stakeholders in this entire design process. So for instance, when a design is being made or when a particular plan is being made, I think our voice, or we should also be equal partners in that design process. As you know, we have to go with the stipulations of these funders. The only thing we can do is to ensure that we are part of the conversation, part of the decision making. So in a sense, we have to convince the government to kind of make us party to the conversation. So I think in JNNURM, it happened in a couple of places. If I remember right, I think the project that was implemented in Kochi, I think many of the designs are actually carried out by KWA. KWA became the implementing agency in some bit of projects. So JNNURM also stipulated on engaging consultants, but I think we were able to negotiate and we were able to ensure that we had a substantial say in the design and implementation of the project. So that is one way of balancing it out. So in a sense, which will ensure our engineers also get the opportunity, and our engineers also are able to also able to shape the entire design implementation process. So that's my way of looking at it.
Okay,
Right, sir.
Luna,
This is
please.
one thing which is well accepted. It seems our design wing is like comparatively weaker. I think
Yes.
Susan Madam will
And
talk about it later on. Anyway, thank you,
yes,
sir. It was convincing. Thank you.
Luna, please.
So I'm Luna. So the presentation was very enlightening one, and actually you nailed the point which I was actually wanting to express. Basically on the Gendrum projects, KW has really has a lot of engineers from different streams, and they are for the ease and for the implementation of the projects efficiently. The consultants are hired by the funding agencies like the JICA and Gendrum, etc. But not all the engineers in the reason being, I think not all the engineers in KW are equipped, or rather tuned to execute a World Bank or ADB project in a time-bound manner. So for I was luckily I was part of the Genrum project, and there were consultants in that. But the consultants basically used to have field visits, and they would just monitor our quality aspect. And all the designs, etc., had been done by our earlier senior efficient engineers. And the Genrum project has been done in a time-bound manner, and it is running successfully till now. But as far as JICA, I cannot comment because I was never part of it. But again, all the funding agencies are asking for consultants, or they are placing consultants is because they are not having full trust on engineers of KWA, whether they will be implementing the project as per the specifications mentioned in the project. So that could be one reason. And as we are progressing with any project, we can usually have a discussion. Always meetings will be there, so we can have discussions with the consultant, and we can raise a point if we are on the right path. I think nobody will say that you have to follow us. So I don't think any project will go overdue on cost if we are monitoring it properly, and we are strictly following all the specifications and the quality aspect. And on one aspect, I just have a view. I don't know whether it will work out or not, but if a project, either ADB or World Bank or JICA, etc., is being executed in a particular city or an area, if KWA develops a team for the project, and they train the team, and they ensure that till the completion of the project, this particular team is uh, they are maintaining, or they are in the execution part. They are not transferred from one area to another, so that the like usually it happens, every 3 years transfers are there. But for the projects, you have to select willing and efficient, be it young and old. Everybody is required, because young engineers, they may be very good at designing and all, but experienced hands are always required for the successful completion. So that team should be there. That's what I feel. I don't know whether it's on the long run. You can also give an idea on that aspect, whether that's a good idea or not. That the team should be there till the end of the project. Like, obviously, people are retiring, okay, they can pass off. But otherwise, if that team is maintained till the start and the end of the project, then it will be done efficiently. And that later on, taking care of it, the maintenance part also, they can have a good say in it. So that's all I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am. I think I completely understand where you're coming from. As far as the forming of the team and getting things in that particular way, getting things done in that particular way, I think it might work. But I don't know how organizationally, feasible it is, or what are the constraints from the organizational perspective, that I'm not very sure about. But just to comment on one thing that you touched upon, which is that the funders are not really convinced about ability of public sector to efficiently design and implement in a time-bound manner. I think partly it is ideological. I think talking to many people from the other side of the aisle, which is people who worked with World Bank, people who have very strong opinions about public sector. Partly it is ideological. I think it is ideological, and it's one size fits all. They don't look at whether a public sector agency has a good track record, whether a public sector agency has internal resources or the capacity to deliver. They don't look at any of this. If you look at most of these documents, or let's say, the project stipulations or conditions, all the projects are supposed to they're just supposed to hire consultants. So I think partly it's ideological, and I think there are cases where it is true as well, where public sector agencies have failed miserably. I'm not talking about KWA, I'm talking about other cases where public sector agencies don't have the capacity, or just don't have the institutional culture to get things done. So that might be true in certain cases. But mostly, if you look at why consultants are supposed to be recruited, or why consultants are supposed to be involved, it's primarily ideological. That's how I'll put it. Yeah.
Okay. Suresh sir, please, any question before?
Actually, I would like to thank you, Gaidam sir, for giving a wonderful presentation, and also very much happy about that Susan madam is attending our section. And my question is whether funding agencies are necessary for retaining public water supply systems.
Yeah, that's. I think you've gone to the heart of the question. I think the key is why is government not, I mean, taking its, I mean, basically meeting its responsibility. Some would argue that water should be welfare and it's the government's responsibility to provide drinking water supply. Why has the government, I mean, why is the government not meeting the responsibility? I think that's a very, I think, correct question to ask. I don't disagree with that, but I think there are practical constraints to that. I don't know. I mean, this is what you hear from bureaucrats, especially the IAS, or let's say people who are part of, I mean, state planning boards and stuff. They'll say that we don't have the resources to spend on water. We don't have so much of resources to spend on water. If you look at the amount of, I mean, the expenditure that was required in Kerala in the 1970s and the expenditure that is required today, it's a huge difference. I think where we miss the trick, I feel, I don't know, this is a completely an outsider's perspective. I'm not a KW insider, but where we miss the trick, even with Jal Jeevan Mission, I find that we have completely missed the trick. I think the point is, for Jal Jeevan Mission, we have almost spent, I mean, more than thousands of crores. I don't exactly know the number, but it runs into thousands of crores. The point is, the question we should ask is, why should everybody need a pipe water connection? I mean, why don't we look at wells? Why don't we look at wells as an investment? Wells are also investments, according to me. And if you see that, I mean, more than 50-60% of Kerala continues to depend on well water. So why can't we focus on that? Why do we need to give pipe water supply to everybody? So that's a question I'll ask. So you are essentially financially stretching yourself so much that you are putting yourself in this corner. I know some of it is due to how JJM guidelines were formulated and how they were transmitted from the center. But I still think JJM strategy has to be very state-centered. I mean, state context, geographical context, the institutional context, all of those things need to be considered. So to kind of answer your question in short, Suresh sir, I think that's a question that is very valid. But I think when it comes to practical matters, when it comes to financial realities, if you look at the state of Kerala finances, I think Kerala state is really desperate to, I mean, access any resources that it can put its hands on. But I'll tell you, there is another issue to this. I mean, taking loans. Taking loans without thinking about how we are going to repay them, right? So it's not that this is free money; we have to repay it. So who's going to be, doing that, and how is that going to affect other welfare provisions? Is something we don't talk about. So we can take all the money from, central government now. We are thinking of taking another loan from, I think, NABARD or I think LIC. I don't exactly know the funding, HUDCO perhaps. But if Kerala government is going to be repaying these, loans, basically the cost of meeting loan repayments, that is going to cut into your other welfare provisioning as well. So that's something that we don't actually think about now in when we take a loan. So that's something that needs to be discussed in the public realm as well.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Sai, sir, please.
Am I audible?
Yeah, audible.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Gerda. So it has been a very good presentation. So now I would like to point out one or two things. One is that KW is in a shift. So there is a departure from solely depending upon the water treatment systems or revenue collection, and that scenario is now slowly changing. And we have now spread our realms of application to sewerage and some other technological interventions. So I think the Kerala, if you think about Kerala, we have plenty of rivers, and it is a paradox that we are depending upon the treated water. So as you said, we have a lot of plenty of wells also. So actually, for the last 20 to 30 years, if you look at the open wells, it has been contaminated. So the used water or whatever is polluting the environment, contributing to the requirement of the treatment of water. So now we cannot segregate water supply, sanitation, sewage, solid waste, etc. We have to consider it as a total entity. It's a total water concept. And moreover, we have a plenty of floods, recurring floods, and shorter duration, heavy intensity rainfalls, and also we have to find out a solution for the stormwater drainage, sanitation, sewage, water, and everything. So it's a matrix actually. So and there is one aspect, and another aspect you mentioned about the domestic technology and something the government was adopting a domestic technology. They were not adopting a domestic technology. So technology is not either a domestic. It's not either domestic or international. We have a technology which is depending upon, or it is based its roots or foundation on solid principles of engineering or science. So whatever government adopted in the Arivakara plant is a well-proven technology that stands for the last 60 to 70 years. It has been adopted by Indian standard of auto practice and all. So we must adopt all the international technologies. There is no boundary for that. And as far as the category engineers are concerned, I think we have a very good hope on them. Now we are even designing most of our big projects by ourselves. The perfect example is the ADB project, the sewerage projects. Mostly it is around Kochi city, anyhow. So and they should have, KW management should have a confidence on their engineers, their technical personnel, so that we will have a say not to the what we call the intermediate players like the consultants. So I don't agree. I don't disagree with the consultants and all, but we are equally capable of doing it. And one more point you raised about the investigation planning and designing of the KWA, which was abolished because of the infeasible solutions we were pointing out. That was not the real case. Actually, investigation planning and design was the backbone of the KWA, because if you think about the judgment mission schemes, because of the lack of only the investigation, proper investigation planning and designing, most of the schemes are now unhealthy. So it was not the case. The problem with the IPD was the persons, actually the human resource management was not capable of making people or selecting people who were really interested in I think working in that area. So that is still in category. We have even 9,000 people at there, nearly 1,000 engineers are there, but many people are having flair, or they are having a very good skills and confidence of working in the field of investigation, planning, design, execution, not finding a way to go into that field because of the improper management. I would like to say it's not a healthy management. So we must find out a solution for the proper human resource management. That's one aspect. So that is well maintained in the private sector. Mostly, so 80 to 90% of the HRM is very good in private sector. That is not finding a place in the government departments. So that is a point. So anyway, we are shifting towards a very good future. I think we have a very good confidence on our engineers. We will do that. Thanks for your presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if I can quickly respond to that, I think I'm also technology agnostic. I don't have a problem with using foreign technology. The problem is, I think you can clearly see that, I mean, the technology that gets chosen or the person which is providing the technology is part of a particular network. So we can call it global interests or whatever. Second thing is, I think it's well proven in the sanitation sector, sir. If you look at ready-made technology options, basically technology as black boxes, they haven't actually worked in many places, especially when it comes to fecal sludge management. The smaller, technological models have actually failed in many places because of, lack of, attention to the contextual details. So, we have to be a little careful when it comes to technology choice. We cannot just take claims of a particular company by its face value. We have to basically choose something that will work for our context. Basically, that's
Yeah,
about
it
it.
must be
I don't have a
customized.
problem with the
It
company
must be
or
customized.
yeah, I don't have a problem with a particular company or anything. But I think when your tender conditions are written in such a way that it kind of you're basically disproportionately affecting competition, right? That's not a fair competition. That's what I'm trying to say. And these are ways in which the powerful players in the global water sector actually get their way. That's what I'm trying to hint at. Yeah, that's it.
Santosh sir, our former General Secretary and President. Santosh sir is there. Please.
Oh, okay, Joy. So my name is Santosh Kumar. I am actually the president of this organization. So first of all, let me thank you, sir, for taking such wonderful classes, accepting invitation from our technical subcommittee. Anyway, this class was very good in my opinion, actually, because rather than going into the technical part of this implementation of JICA project, you have rather concentrated on the institutional impact, economic and political implications. I'm not explaining all this thing. I'm straight away coming to the question, which is not related to this class actually. So what advice can you give to this institution? Because we are facing two major issues. One is the foreign investing agencies, which is directly taking over the water supply scheme. They are even taking over this O&M also. So for before it was only implementation of project. Now it is started taking over this O&M also. On the other hand, we are facing crisis because of the 73-74 amendment, which is providing a complete constitutional right to the local self-governments for taking over this water supply scheme. Thus, in these two crises, the existence of KW is very means facing so many problems.
Yes.
What advice will you give for this institution in this crisis?
Yes. Again, sir, I think thank you for your question. I think it's a very important question, but I'm not sure I'm entirely qualified to answer this question. But I'll try to give you an answer which might sound a little feasible, because if you look at other states, for instance, if you look at states like Maharashtra, so Maharashtra has a role for, organization like KW. I think they call it Maharashtra Jeevan Pradhikaran, MJP. They have actually given, the local governments, but the role, they have a particular role, because that's what constitutionally local governments are supposed to be responsible for drinking water and sanitation. But that doesn't mean that an organization like KW is not important. It's incredibly important, because you're not going to have the kind of capacity at the local level at every district or every panchayat. So in a sense, we have to start thinking about, the future of KW. KW obviously cannot continue to function the way it is functioning now, which where it is completely responsible for everything, for producing water, for distributing it, for collecting tariffs, basically doing everything. Because I think even now, I think there are schemes KWA is actually devolving, right? It is giving it up to local governments. So I think it's a question of time before the pressure builds. So I think we have to start thinking about how do we reimagine KWA's role in drinking water provisioning and sanitation in Kerala. So one way of looking at it is, I think some of the existing employees might be moved to to panchayats or to local bodies where you'll be a technical expert there. I don't know. But other thing is, I think KWA will continue to remain very relevant as a technical hub, as a hub of technical knowledge, or as a hub of institutional knowledge, which will oversee the entire sector, be it policy matters, technical matters, or let's say major planning matters, right? Because planning is a major issue when it comes to water provisioning. So we can't expect local bodies to plan. So it has to be a state level agency that will be more effective in terms of planning, in terms of ensuring policy cohesiveness or coherence, and in terms of ensuring the standard of service provision across Kerala. So in a sense, I feel there is a huge role for Kerala Water Authority, but we have to start thinking about what kind of agency KWA will be in 20 years, and what will be the size of the agency, how will it raise money? So basically, where will KWA's money come from? So we have to basically start thinking about that, because like you said, O&M is now being given to private sector players. design, I mean, it's increasingly outsourced. And on the other hand, you have the pressure to devolve to, let's say, panchayats and to corporations. But I'll tell you something, sir, with JJM, right? This is also undergoing a huge confusion. I'm very sure no, I mean, panchayat or, I mean, especially in rural Kerala, I don't see any, I mean, panchayat really equipped to handle drinking water supply and sanitation. Because if you see the implementation process for JJM, the panchayats are nowhere in the picture. It's most of the work is actually done by KWA engineers, or let's say it's completely outsourced. The panchayats have no idea what is implemented, how they are going to raise the finances. So it's a very I mean, complicated question, but it'll be good if we start thinking about what is the future of KWA and how we can reimagine KWA. Because then I think then you can clearly say that this is our responsibility. You can clearly define your responsibility. Now KWA is responsible for everything, but KWA is blamed for everything as well. But it does not have the resources. So then if you clearly say, okay, this is going to be our responsibility, this is our remit, this is what we are going to be doing. So then you're clearly drawing a line. You're saying that, okay, this is what we are supposed to do and we are doing it very well. Now don't come and tell us that we are not doing a good job or we are being ineffective. So that's the problem here. KWA is expected to do everything, but it just does not have the resources. So that's what I think. Yeah.
Yes, sir. ഡോക്ടർ രഞ്ജു, പുതിയ ആളുകൾ ആരെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കുക, അവരൊക്കെയാണ് ഈ ഭാവിയിൽ നമ്മുടെ വാട്ടർ അതോറിറ്റി നയിക്കേണ്ട ആൾക്കാർ. രഞ്ജു എന്തെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കാനുണ്ടോ? അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമുക്ക് സൂസൻ മാഡത്തിലേക്ക് കടക്കാം.
Sir, my name is Raju Mohan. Okay, sir, actually, but I mean,
sir, your voice is breaking.
Am I audible now?
Sound.
Yes, sir, it's better now.
Am I audible? Okay, sir, my question is, we already discussed various aspects of money investment in Kerala. My question is about its benefits for common public, or which is good or bad, like when or bad, consider various examples be there. So what about that?
So I'm sorry, I'm not able to follow your question.
Is it good or bad sector for a common man?
Okay, is it good or bad, sir, for a common man?
Am I audible?
Yeah. Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Means, sir, we are making a lot of policies, or we are actually having a kind of right. If like DB like that, we are doing a kind of privatization, right?
Okay.
So what?
Yes, sir. So yeah, I think you're asking the question whether what is happening now is good for the common man, right? ADB, yeah. That's what you want to ask, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so I think the answer is a little complicated, sir, because I don't think this is privatization. That's the problem. Because how do we define privatization? Because I'm just going by definition of privatization that is sort of norm across the world. So if you look at let's say Thames Water is the agency that's providing water supply for London. It's completely privatized. So the government has no say in I mean, how water is produced, how potable water is produced, how it's distributed. I mean, they are free to I mean, fix their tariffs. It's basically you're transferring entire property rights to an organization. So what is happening in Kerala Water Authority's case is not privatization. You are essentially, I mean, commercializing certain functions of Kerala Water Authority. That's all you're doing. But the problem is, I mean, at what cost? That's the question we are asking, right? So the question we have to ask is, why are we, I mean, it's okay to commercialize certain functions. I'm fine with that for efficiency reasons or whatever. But at what cost, right? Is it leading to weakening of public sector? That's the question I think we have to ask. And if by commercializing certain functions, you are reducing the size of public sector, that's also something that we need to sort of think about. But I think, I mean, sorry to say this, but I don't see public sector re-emerge the way it existed in the 1960s and 70s. That is something that I'm pretty convinced about. So we are going to see more, let's say, compact public sector, but is it good for the common man? So ultimately, it's the government which will have some control over how water is priced. So I mean, even if ADB I mean implements these projects, it's ultimately a political decision to increase water tariffs. The problem here is the complete opacity when it comes to I mean, how we borrow funds and how the money is used. The question we have to ask is whether every rupee that is spent on capital works is being effectively used. Then do we have an O&M plan? Do we have an effective plan for maintaining our assets? Or we are going to spend all the money now, let's say 20,000 crores, let's say in the case of JJM, and we don't have a plan for O&M. We don't have the money for O&M. Who's responsible for this 20,000 crores? Right? It's public money, right? Plus, secondly, I mean, because you're going to be paying loans, you're going to be affecting the ability of the Kerala state to, let's say, meet its other obligations in health sector or in infrastructure or in, let's say, other schooling, let's say, education. So we don't know. So the point is, we have to think about how we are spending that money, whether it's being effectively spent, and do we have a plan for effective operations and maintenance of that infrastructure, and basically some kind of institutional sustainability. That's what I think. And that's probably the right question to ask, because I don't see the Kerala government, even if it's the Congress government, they are not going to increase the water price by 100%, 200%. That's not going to happen. It might increase, but not to the extent that we imagine. That's what I would think.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sir, Susan Madam, please.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I thank the AWACO, the technical team, to organize such a debating or a session like this. And I congratulate Dr. Gautam for acquiring your PhD on this particular topic, especially a study on Kerala water supply, the statistics study from even 1935 onwards, is it? And we never heard of the previous history before 1956. Okay, so then regarding your arguments and your opinion, that I fully agree with many of the points. But as Dr. Shaiju was saying, your opinion, or maybe the opinion of some other engineers from KW itself, that the IPD wing was resolved only because of the reason that the projects was not viable or it was not technically feasible to implement. That's fully wrong, because it was not the scenario. And I myself started my service in IPD wing. And whatever projects we planned, all the projects implemented successfully, and it is still running perfectly okay. So it was not the reason. It was some other, so many other reasons, so many political reasons, as well as so many employees' interest on working with other cases also. So that was. I am not going to express all that opinion, my own opinion in that case. But anyway, it was resolved. And now there was no IPD wing. And as you said, investigation planning was one of the most important part of KWA earlier and even now itself. And then coming to the JICA projects. So JICA project, as you explained, it was a very large project. Crores of 3,000 crores rupees were spent on water supply for 5 schemes. And as you mentioned before that, KWA engineers were able to implement very small projects, maybe 10 lakhs, 50 lakhs or 200 lakhs or 300 lakhs only. At that time, we started the JICA project costing 3,000 crores or so. So that much large projects we could not implement at that particular time. Maybe the inefficiency or incapability of the technical as well as the financial capability of the KWA engineers. And moreover, it was the strategy of the funding agencies that we all know that the consultant should be there. And so in that way, I am not against for any consultants, external consultants. Only because of the consultants, we were able to take up that projects and we could manage, implement, and now it is in under operation and maintenance. And again, there are so many difference of opinion between the consultants and the KWA engineers. But many of the that opinion, many of the decisions taken by the consultants were always of their interest is technical feasibility and serviceability. They were not even thought of any cost reduction or the optimum cost on the project, because it is funded by the external agency. They are interested to give away more money to Government of India or Kerala. So that was their interest, and our interest is to reduce the cost, and at the same time it should be serviceable. So for example, initially the JICA project was designed, as you mentioned, there were large reservoirs were there, and even we were not even able to fill up that reservoirs all the time. So it was initially their design was for 24-hour storage. The capacity of the storage tank shall be 24 hours. Then we got a technical scrutiny wing was there to oversee all the tender evaluations, decision making, everything. So wherein the MD, TM, the chief engineer, everybody was members of that committee. So at that time we insisted that no, this is our decision. This should be implemented. We are not going to implement the 24-hour storage capacity here. So then finally, after different debates, they agreed for 12 hours. But our conventional tie is 8-hour storage only. That is sufficient actually. But they were insisting the external policies like 24 hours. And then finally, they reduced to 12 hours. And that 12 hours itself is more than the required capacity that we all know. Again, regarding the selection of pipe material, again, it was their policy decision that we have to use the Primo pipe, so many other type of materials they put into the project preparation, and they insisted for that. And as somebody was saying regarding the Charthala project, where we had a very bad experience of this pipe selection of pipe material. And finally, we were able to change a little bit of area, the pipe material we changed, and finally only we could complete that project. So that type of interventions were there at that time from KWA engineers. Because we were very stringent. We said we were not even allowed to continue with the project if you are not changing these conditions. So finally, they also took a decision, okay, we will accept your proposal. Like that, whenever we are initiating a project planning, even with the external aided funding, even with the consultants, there should be clear-cut strategic policies, which says that who is accountable for all these failures? Who is accountable for the operation and maintenance? As you mentioned, this SCADA project, the SCADA system which we implemented after paying crores of rupees. And it was a very good management system, is it? And if somebody else is sitting in the room, the chief engineer, he can manage, he can monitor where it is, the failure is there, how much water is there in each tank, how much water is there, where is the complaint, everything we can monitor there. But once it is implemented, who is the responsibility? Who has got the responsibility to maintain it? It is the KWA only, is it? So KWA has to have that capability, and they have to continue that system since it is already implemented, and it is a very good system all over the world. All the water supply systems, you know, the Singapore water supply project, everywhere it is one person is sitting inside the SCADA room or the monitoring room. He or she is able to handle all these systems or manage or to guide the operational maintenance team so that they can do the rectification works. So like that, it was the responsibility of KWA only to maintain that system instead of putting it into just like a dark room now. So that was our what is that, cultural behavior or institutional capacity or institutional capability we have to develop. So in that way, the external agencies and the consultants, the KWA could implement or the KWA could improve their institutional capacity, the institutional capability, and the project planning strategy itself. Earlier, we were not having any strategic planning, or there was no systematic format for uploading or a systematic format for submitting the report, etc., etc. But with the JICA project, KWA also started doing all that type of monitoring and management systems, clear-cut formats, etc., etc. We improved in that way so much from that JICA project. And then regarding this ADB project, coming to the ADB project of Cochin, as we all know that KWA engineers are capable to design, plan, implement, execute everything. But at the same time, as you said, from where should we get the funding? If it is from ADB or from any other external agency, they will definitely insist some consultants like this. As you were saying that the Generam project, we could manage to get the approval, to design, get the approval, implement, etc. without the consultants. That was with our bold decision. We said we never allow any consultants to plan and implement the project. We will do it. But if you have if you want to monitor it, or if you want to check the quality checking, you can have any external agency, but there is no objection in that. So in that way, KWA or the management, no, I'm not saying about the staff of KWA or the Aqua team or anybody else, but the management should have that strong decision that KWA engineers are capable to plan and implement any projects. But for institutionalizing or to improving our institutional capability, the external consultants can also be there, but the upper hand should not be the consultants. We KWA engineers should have the same right or same hand to say what is there, what we have to implement. So that strong support from the staff or compulsion from the staff to the management, I think the management will also take a linear or a decision which will support the KWA as a whole, the organization as a whole. You might have, I think you have not mentioned anything regarding our Jalanidhi project, regarding you were saying that, and again, when the Generam project also when started, because of our compulsion, the local self-government were signed a MOU, a tri-party agreement, KWA, the local body, and the government. So all these were because of our compulsion only. The compulsion from the management as well as from the compulsion from the staff of KWA. So, or the employees. So in that way, if we are having that right way to question the management, or to have a discussion with the government. They may change their policy so that it will be helpful for KWA as a whole, and it will be beneficial for KWA as an institution. Maybe they may be taking the loan, because the CM has already deliberately said we will go with the ADB loan. So there is no change, or there is no change in that decision. We cannot expect anything from him. So his decision is the final. So that it was already there. So now how to make it more useful, or how we can make it more comfortable to KWA as an institution, that you people, all staff of the KWA, can think of that with the management, and then do it, go ahead with that project. That would be better. Otherwise, there is no other choice with us. And as a consumer of Cochin water supply project, I will say KWA service, the KWA service, or the service that may expected by by an external agency after ADB project may be better, because our staff or our employees may also be more vigilant, or more transparent, more efficient in doing all sorts of operation and maintenance works in the field. That also we can expect. So that will also be a benefit for the public. That is my opinion. So once again, I thank all the Aqua office bearers and the team. And again, Gautam, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. If I can just take 1 minute, I think you talked about the institutional culture. I think leadership is a major problem that emerged in my study as well, because after I think 95, 96, every 2 years there is change in leadership at the top. I think without, let's say, leadership from the top, I'm not sure we can have strategic plans made for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. There's no way we can build that institution. And also, if I'm not wrong, usually when a government comes to power in Kerala, it's a very small party which
Yes.
gets water supply.
Yes, yes.
It's a very small party which has 1 or 2 seats, which who has the control over KWA. So in a sense, KWA water is a major issue, but I think if a major political party takes an interest and says, okay, we'll allow 10 years for this institution to sort of strengthen itself, to have a vision for itself, then things might change. But perhaps that's what we have to push for more, stability in terms of leadership. And also we have to nurture leadership from inside. Because if we go before 1996, I think most of our chief engineers became MDs. From 84 to I think almost 96, 97, I think even beyond that. But now it's not the case. We have IAS officers who are MDs. I'm not against IAS officers. There have been IAS officers who understand a bit of the engineering. But I still think a bit of stability in leadership would really help in having a strategy and thinking about O&M. And also thinking about what employees want, right? I think a lot of engineers feel hard done by. I think they are really disappointed. They would like to do more, but like one gentleman pointed out, it's human resource issues. I think we have to ensure that our engineers are rewarded, or at least they're not scolded for something they are not, responsible for. So in a sense, some of them feel that they're not getting the support from the management or even from the public. So I think these are some things which we can think about.
Okay, thank you. നമ്മൾ കുറച്ചധികം സമയം 7:30 നമ്മൾ തുടങ്ങാനിരുന്നെങ്കിൽ 7:45. ഇപ്പോൾ 8:45 കഴിഞ്ഞ് 9:45 പോകുന്നു. 2 മണിക്കൂറോളം നമ്മൾ ഗവൺമെന്റിന്റെ വിലപ്പെട്ട ഒരു സംഭാഷണം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇന്ററാക്ഷൻ നമുക്ക് ലഭിച്ചു. വളരെ ശ്രദ്ധേയമാണ്. നമ്മുടെ ഈ സെഷന്റെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത, ഗൗതം നമ്മുടെ വാട്ടർ അതോറിറ്റിയെ കുറിച്ച് 1933 മുതലുള്ള, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിനു മുമ്പ് തന്നെ ആ 33 വെല്ലിംഗ്ടൺ സ്കീം വിഭാവനം ചെയ്തതുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ഒരു പബ്ലിക്കേഷൻ തന്നെ ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ ആ പബ്ലിക്കേഷനിൽ അദ്ദേഹം ഒരുപാട് പേപ്പറുകൾ അതുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് കണ്ടെടുക്കുകയും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ റിസർച്ച് ചെയ്തിട്ടാണ് അത് പബ്ലിഷ് ചെയ്തത്. അപ്പൊ അത് ആ ചരിത്രം 1933 മുമ്പുള്ള ഒരു അനുഭവം തൊട്ട് തന്നെ ഇന്ന് നമ്മുടെ വാട്ടർ അതോറിറ്റി അനുഭവിക്കുന്ന ആ ഒരു ട്രാൻസ്ഫോർമേഷൻ ഏറ്റവും നന്നായി പഠിച്ച് അതിൽ PhD ഒക്കെ എടുക്കുക എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് കിട്ടാവുന്നതിൽ നമ്മുടെ സ്ഥാപനത്തെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ വാക്കുകൾക്ക് ഒരു പ്രത്യേക വില കൊടുക്കേണ്ടതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ എക്സ്പേർട്ട് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഇപ്പൊ നമ്മുടെ ഹരികുമാർ തിരുവനന്തപുരം വാട്ടർ സപ്ലൈയുടെ പല കാര്യങ്ങളും ഇതുപോലെ പഴയ കാര്യങ്ങൾ, പഴയ നമ്മുടെ മാപ്പുകളും അതിന്റെ ലൊക്കേഷൻസ് ഒക്കെ കണ്ടുപിടിക്കാൻ ഒരുപാട് വർക്ക് ചെയ്ത ആളുകളാണ്. അപ്പൊ അതുപോലെ സൂസൻ മാഡം ഈ സ്ഥാപനവുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് ഒട്ടേറെ ഇൻവോൾവ് ചെയ്ത ഒരു വ്യക്തിയാണ്. അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെ വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട വ്യക്തികൾ ഇതിലുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ എന്നിരുന്നാലും നമ്മുടെ ഒരു പുതിയ ജനറേഷനെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ആ ഒരു ഗൗരവത്തിൽ ഇതിനെ കാണുന്നുണ്ടോ എന്നുള്ളത് സംശയമാണ് എന്നാണ് എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലാവുന്നത്. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഇത് കേട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്നവർ ഇതിന്റെ റെക്കോർഡഡ് വീഡിയോ നമുക്ക് വീണ്ടും കേൾക്കുക. ഇതുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് നമുക്ക് നമ്മുടെ വാട്ടർ അതോറിറ്റിക്ക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ ഈ വാട്ടർ സപ്ലൈ ഏജൻസികൾക്ക് ഒരു നല്ല ഒപ്പീനിയൻ കിട്ടാവുന്ന ഒരു എക്സ്പെർട്ടാണ് ശ്രീ ഗൗതം. അതുപോലെ നമുക്ക് ഇതുപോലെ നമ്മുടെ മേഖലയിൽ മുമ്പ് സെഷൻ എടുത്തിട്ടുള്ള നാരായണ സാർ, IIT ബോംബെയിലെ നാരായണ സാറും നമുക്ക് ഇതുപോലെ വിലപ്പെട്ട നിർദ്ദേശങ്ങൾ പ്രൈസിങ്ങുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട കാര്യങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ നൽകിയിട്ടുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പൊ ഇങ്ങനെ നമ്മുടെ സ്ഥാപനവുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് ഇപ്പോൾ വച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന ചില പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ, അതായത് ടെക്നിക്കലി എത്രത്തോളം നമുക്ക് കോൺട്രിബ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ കഴിയുന്നു എന്നുള്ളത് ഒരു ചോദ്യചിഹ്നമായിട്ട് നിൽക്കുകയാണ്. അതിന്റെ ഉത്തരം നമ്മൾ തന്നെയാണ് കണ്ടെത്തേണ്ടത്. നമുക്ക് അതിനുള്ള സ്കോപ്പ് ഇല്ലാതിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഈ അക്വാടെക് പോലുള്ള സെഷൻസ് പാരലായിട്ട് വയ്ക്കുന്നത്, ഇതൊക്കെ വാസ്തവം പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഈ സ്ഥാപനം തന്നെ ചെയ്യേണ്ടതാണ്. വാട്ടർ അതോറിറ്റി ഒഫീഷ്യലായിട്ട് ഇത്തരം ഡിസ്കഷനുകൾ പ്രൊമോട്ട് ചെയ്യുകയും ഇത് ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഒരു ബ്രെയിൻ സ്റ്റോമിങ് സെഷൻ പോലെയൊക്കെ വെക്കേണ്ടതാണ്. പക്ഷെ ആ ഒരു വിടവാണ് നമ്മുടെ സംഘടന അക്വാടെക് എന്നുള്ള പേരിൽ നികത്തിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ പാരലായിട്ട് ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരുപാട് ട്രെയിനിങ് സെഷൻ, ഇപ്പോൾ 60ഓളം ട്രെയിനിങ് സെഷൻ ഇതുപോലെ നമ്മൾ പാരലായിട്ട് നടത്തി. അതുപോലെ പുതിയ കോച്ചിങ്സ് നടത്തി. ഇങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ നമ്മൾ പാരലായിട്ട് നടത്തുകയാണ്. അപ്പൊ ഇത് തന്നെ ഈ സംഘടനയുടെ ഒരു പ്രവർത്തനം തന്നെ ഒരു നല്ല ലക്ഷണമായിട്ടാണ് എനിക്ക് കാണാൻ കഴിയുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ ഞാനിത് ദീർഘിപ്പിക്കുന്നില്ല. നമ്മുടെ സംഘടനയുടെ ജനറൽ സെക്രട്ടറി ശ്രീ തമ്പിയുണ്ട്. തമ്പി ഇതിനോട് 2 വാക്കുകൂടെ കൂട്ടിച്ചേർത്തിട്ട് നമുക്കിത് കൺക്ലൂഡ് ചെയ്യാമെന്നാണ് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നത്.
ജോയ് പ്ലീസ്. ഗൗതം സാറിന് എന്തെങ്കിലും പറയാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ more than 98 years of history in his mind. So it's better to get advice him to improve our service.
കുറെ പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞു, നമുക്ക് വീണ്ടും പറയിക്കാം. നമുക്ക് കൺക്ലൂഷൻ ആയില്ല. നമുക്ക് ഈ തമ്പിയുടെ ഒരു ചോദ്യം ചോദിച്ചതിന് ശേഷം അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ മറുപടിയൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് ചോദിക്കാം.
Okay, it's better.
തമ്പി.
Okay. Gautam sir, as a general secretary of this organization, I express my heartfelt gratitude to your presentation and interactive sections. Thank you. And also I am congratulating our Aquatech team that they have started the season 2 of our regular interaction sections with your presentation. Congratulate to them also. സാധാരണ സാങ്കേതിക സ്ഥാപനങ്ങൾ ഇതുപോലുള്ള ഇന്ററാക്റ്റീവ് സെഷൻ
നെറ്റ് കട്ടായി തമ്പിയുടെ. ഓക്കെ, നമുക്ക് തമ്പിയുടെ പിന്നീട് കേൾക്കാം. ലാസ്റ്റ് ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ഒരു ഫീഡ്ബാക്ക് പറയാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഫീഡ്ബാക്ക് വേഗം പറയുക. എന്നിട്ട് നമുക്ക് സാറിന്റെ ഒരു കൺക്ലൂഷൻ കൂടെ കേൾക്കാം. ഫീഡ്ബാക്ക്.
ഞാൻ പ്രസിഡന്റ് തന്നെയാണ്. എന്തായാലും ജനറൽ സെക്രട്ടറി പറഞ്ഞ് അവസാനിപ്പിക്കാത്തതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ പറയാണ്, നമ്മളെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ഗൗതം സാറുടെ ഇന്നത്തെ ഈ ഒരു സെഷൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ, അദ്ദേഹത്തെ ഈ സെഷൻ നമ്മൾ വാച്ച് ചെയ്താൽ തന്നെ അറിയാം കേരളത്തിലെ വാട്ടർ സെക്ടറിനെ കുറിച്ചും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വാട്ടർ സെക്ടറിന്റെ ദൈനംദിനമായിട്ടുള്ള ഡെവലപ്മെന്റിന് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷണലൈസ് ചെയ്ത മാറ്റങ്ങളെ കുറിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളതും കേരള വാട്ടർ അതോറിറ്റി എന്ന സ്ഥാപനം കേരള വാട്ടർ സെക്ടറുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട മാറ്റങ്ങളെ എങ്ങനെ അഡ്രസ് ചെയ്യുന്നുള്ള ഓരോ വിഷയങ്ങളെയും കൂടെ വാച്ച് ചെയ്ത് മുന്നോട്ട് പോകുന്നുണ്ട് എന്നുള്ളതാണ് പുള്ളിയുടെ ഇന്നത്തെ സെഷനിൽ നമ്മൾ ഏറ്റവും വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ടതായിട്ട് നമ്മൾ ഒബ്സർവ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു വസ്തുതയായിട്ട് എനിക്ക് തോന്നിയത്. അതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ ഈ ഒരു സെഷനിൽ ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ഗൗതം സാറിന്റെ ഈ ഒരു സെഷൻ നമുക്ക് അവസാനിപ്പിക്കാൻ കഴിയില്ല. എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു അക്വാടെക് തന്നെ അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ഒരു ഫിസിക്കൽ ഒരു ക്ലാസ് നമുക്ക് ലഭിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, അങ്ങനെ ഒരു അവസരം ഒരുക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അത് ഏറ്റവും മികച്ചതായിരിക്കും. നമ്മൾ ഈ ഓൺലൈൻ സെഷനേക്കാൾ കുറച്ചുകൂടി നല്ല രീതിയിൽ ഒരു ഫിസിക്കൽ ഇന്ററാക്ഷൻ സെഷൻ സാറിനെ ഇവിടെ സാറിന്റെ കൺവീനിയന്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഡേറ്റിനെ നമുക്ക് കേരളത്തിൽ വരുത്തിക്കാൻ കഴിയുമെങ്കിൽ കുറച്ചുകൂടി നല്ല രീതിയിലുള്ള ഒരു ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റി കൊടുത്തുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മുടെ സ്ഥാപനത്തെ ഗുണപരമായിട്ടുള്ള മാറ്റങ്ങൾക്ക് എങ്ങനെ വിധേയമാക്കാമെന്നുള്ള അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ഈ മേഖലയിലെ ഒരുപാട് വർഷത്തെ പ്രയത്നത്തിൽ അദ്ദേഹം ആർജിച്ചെടുത്ത അറിവിനെ നമ്മുടെ മേഖലയുടെ സസ്റ്റൈനബിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ള മുന്നോട്ട് പോക്കിനെ എങ്ങനെ നമുക്ക് ഉപയോഗിക്കാം എന്നുള്ള കാര്യത്തിൽ നല്ല വിലപ്പെട്ട അഭിപ്രായം ഉണ്ടാകും എന്നുള്ള ഉറപ്പാണ്. അത്രയും മികച്ച രീതിയിലാണ് അദ്ദേഹം ഈ ക്ലാസ് കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്തത്. ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ ടെക്നിക്കൽ പോർഷൻ ഒഴിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ഇതിന്റെ ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷണലും മറ്റ് പൊളിറ്റിക്കലും സോഷ്യലുമായിട്ടുള്ള ഈ വാട്ടർ സെക്ടറിലെ ചേഞ്ചസ് ആണ് അദ്ദേഹം കോൺസെൻട്രേറ്റ് ചെയ്തത്. അത് നമ്മുടെ സംഘടനയെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ഇതിൽ പങ്കെടുത്ത ഓരോ ഓഫീസർമാരെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം വളരെ പ്രാധാന്യം അറിയിക്കുന്ന ഒരു അറിവാണ്. 22 വർഷം ഈ മേഖലയുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് സർവീസിലിരിക്കുന്ന എനിക്ക് പോലും അറിയാത്ത ചരിത്രപരമായിട്ടുള്ള വിഷയങ്ങളാണ് അദ്ദേഹം ഇവിടെ വളരെ ചുരുങ്ങിയ സമയത്ത് അവതരിപ്പിച്ചത് എന്നുള്ളത് തന്നെ വളരെ പ്രസക്തമാണ്. എന്തായാലും ഇങ്ങനൊരു ക്ലാസ് നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടി അദ്ദേഹം കുറച്ച് സമയമെങ്കിലും അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ വിശാലമായിട്ടുള്ള കളക്ഷനിൽ ഒരു എന്താ പറയുക ടിപ്പ് ഓഫ് ഐസ്ബർഗ് ആണ് ഇത് വരൂ എങ്കിൽ പോലും നമ്മുടെ ഈ കുറച്ച് ആളുകൾക്ക് വേണ്ടി ഓഫീസർമാർക്ക് വേണ്ടി ഇത്രയും സമയം കണ്ടെത്തി 2 മണിക്കൂറോളം ഇവിടെ ശ്രദ്ധിച്ച് നമ്മളുടെ ചർച്ചകളിൽ പങ്കെടുത്തുകൊണ്ട് നമുക്ക് മറുപടി തന്ന അദ്ദേഹത്തെ പ്രത്യേകം പ്രശംസിക്കുകയാണ്. പ്രത്യേകം ഈ സംഘടനയുടെ നന്ദി അറിയിക്കുന്നു.
I'll be happy to come to Trivandrum or any other place. Thank you so much for the offer. Thank you for the kind words.
ജോയ് ഫീഡ്ബാക്ക് ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ സാറ് ഇപ്പൊ തന്നെ നമുക്ക് 2 മണിക്കൂറോളം സ്പെയർ ചെയ്തു. സാറിന് ഇനി കൂടുതൽ നമ്മൾ ലേറ്റ് ആക്കിണ്ട്. ആർക്കും ഫീഡ്ബാക്ക് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് അവസാനിപ്പിക്കാം.
ഫീഡ്ബാക്കിന് സമയം കളയേണ്ടത് എന്തായാലും അത് വളരെ പ്രസക്തമാണ്.
ക്ലോസ് ചെയ്യാം.
ഓക്കെ, ഗൗതം സാർ ഒന്ന് ലാസ്റ്റ് 2 വാക്കുകൂടി പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് അവസാനിപ്പിക്കും. Sir, could you say a few words for the conclusion?
Yes, I'm just grateful for the opportunity. I think, I'm just delighted to interact with this forum, because I think I should admit that without speaking to dozens of incredibly generous KW engineers, I wouldn't have gone anywhere in my thesis. So this includes people who are really old. I mean, people who joined when it was PWD, it was not even PhD, to people who are really incredibly young who joined after, let's say, 1990, 1995. So I could speak to all the people. They were incredibly kind, and I have a very personal, I think, attachment to the organization, because I think I saw that public sector spirit in most of the employees. I think they want water supply provision to be welfare, in the sense they want water supply provision to be efficient, but at the same time they also feel the responsibility to deliver to people of Kerala, especially people who are not well off. I think they see that responsibility, and I saw that spirit in most of the engineers. So in that sense, I also have a very I have an investment, I have a stake in KW's future. So I'm really delighted that I was given the opportunity to interact with you today. And I think, like Sir said, I will be very happy to come down to Trivandrum. Anytime. I think we can plan that. And thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. We may conclude. We may stop.
Hello, shall I? Are we?
Okay. We may start. Sunil.
Good evening, everyone. As we came to the conclusion of this knowledge sharing session, it is my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the Technical Committee of Association of Kerala Water Authority Officers. Firstly, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Professor Gautam Ganapathy sir, for sharing your valuable insights and expertise with us today. We are truly honored to have you here. A sincere thank you to the organizing team, Suresh sir,